state development strategy. And all we got, as usual, is platitudes. So I think Minister Harman got confused and thought he was still in the opposition, arguing against the LCDS. But Mr. Speaker, we are going through Budget 2019. And you know, the interesting thing about the Budget 2019, and having listened to my friend across the way, Mr. Harman, about all the great things it will do, I have some simple issues to raise. Some very, very simple issues to raise. Mr. Speaker, this is the 5th budget of the APNU AFC government. By the end, when this budget is approved, the amount of money that would have been allocated from the resources of Guyana would have been $1.3 trillion. And so, Mr. Speaker, in the first 4 budgets, we reached almost $1 trillion. And one can think about in the last many years, whether it's under Burnham or Hoyt or Cherry Jagan, Janet Jagan, or Jagdeo, what would our country have benefited from $1 trillion in a short period of 3.5 years? We've never spent that kind of money in such a short period of time. And so where is the proof of the pudding? Where do we see the progress? Where are the big transformation projects? Where is it that we can say as Guyanese that we are going somewhere, that the country is moving forward? Mr. Speaker, we have heard ministers get up with prepared speeches. But the people out there hear us. The business community have commented on this budget. The trade union movement has commented on this budget. And you have been hard ears to respond to anything that they've said. We have brought here in the House some of the concerns of people of this country. And you've been hard ears to it. You've come into this House with this bullyism, this big bragar behavior that nobody counts except you. Mr. Speaker, one of the most critical things was the excise tax on fuel. The price of fuel went down, yet this government made no change in the excise budget and the excise tax, knowing that this would impact on every ordinary Guyanese who had to use fuel, whether it's catching minibus, taxi, motorcycle, the cost of food, the cost of producing. You didn't do it and you knew. And yet you come here and say GPL made a profit. That profit could have been shared with ordinary people in this country to make their lives a little better. And you come and dare to talk about good life? Seriously? Mr. Speaker, $1.3 trillion by the end of 2019 will be expended. Almost $1 trillion by the end of this year. And Mr. Speaker, we've heard about this being the good life. But Mr. Speaker, I want to ask the ministers at a personal human level, do you not see what is going on in the streets of our country? Do you not see the increase in the beggars? Do you not see the number of young people and women who are at traffic lights cleaning windscreens and selling water to make a living? Is that the jobs you're talking about creating? Is that the jobs you're creating in this country? Have you not seen that one of the biggest industries of your government is selling dog food? Dog food on the streets of Sheriff Street, Railway Embankment, south up on the East Bank. Is that the new economy you're proposing for ordinary people? Dog food? I didn't see it mentioned. I didn't see it mentioned in all your big things. Mr. Speaker, do you not see that our people are suffering? Do you not see, do you not hear? Have you talked to taxi drivers? Have you talked to minibus drivers? Have you talked to the boatmen at Parika who talk about the drop in service in business going on in this country? Have you gone and walked on Water Street and on Regent Street and asked the business people, asked the vendors in the markets, what is happening to business in this country? You don't. You drive around in your big fancy Land Cruisers with all your security and you don't talk to ordinary people. Mr. Speaker, do you talk? Do you talk?
I'll remember, Mr. Teixeira, please reclaim your seat for a moment. Honourable members, I must ask you to put it frankly, make less noise in the chamber. Please proceed, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Speaker, for the ministers, you go to barbers, you go to hairdressers, you go nail craft people. Do you ever notice that the business is less, that their earnings are less? Do you not notice? Are you blind to see what's going on in this country? Yet you come here and you talk about the good life. Are you blind that you don't see when you go to Parika what's happening to the boatmen there? What's happening to the business community? Mr. Speaker, the vendors in the market, you take them and you move them here, then you move them there. 400 people, a lot of them are women. Go out to the Merriman Mall, you move out a whole set of people from Merriman Mall. Ask what's going on. Mr. Speaker, ask the miners. Gold. Minister Jordan's midterm report last year, July, showed that this economy was being bolstered by gold. Gold. It was the main thing in the productive sector that was keeping this country afloat. And you went and brought more taxes, more problems on the miners, seizing their equipment, doing all sorts of dastardly things to ordinary small people. And yet you come here, gold, the one thing that is holding us up, is now going to be going down. You admitted it in your midterm report in July this year, Mr. Jordan, and you've admitted it in the budget. Yet you don't see that what you need to do is to reverse some of your policies, reverse some of the taxes. Don't worry about whether you like our LCDS or not. You were in government. Where's your Green State? You talk about it, but you don't do anything about it. How can we have a dialogue when we don't know what it says? Exactly. There's no draft. There's no initial skeleton. There's no guidelines. There's nothing. You know, Mr. Speaker, when I was a little child, there used to be a song that used to come on the radio, yes, a long time ago, but I don't look as bad as you and I'm older. There used to be a song by Danny Kaye. And it was The Emperor's New Clothes. And The Emperor's New Clothes is that the emperor was supposed to have had these brand new clothes. And he paraded through the streets and everyone said, oh, how wonderful, how beautiful the clothes. And a little boy, and the king. And the little boy said, I'll blurt it out because out of the mouths of babes comes truth. And the little babe said, but he's naked. He's naked as the day he's born. This is like this budget. You're naked like the day you're born. There's nothing in this budget. And yet you go around like the people. The emperor's beautifully clothed. There is good life. Everything's improving. We're doing great in health. We're doing so great in health that ordinary poor people go to the emergency room that need to have in their wards, and they spend 2 days in the emergency room sitting in wheelchairs and chairs with their IV stuck in their hand because there's no beds, no facilities for them. And you come and tell us about the improvement in the health sector? Women are dying from maternal mortality, and there's nobody's heart is hurting. You come here and tell us about improvement, but nobody's heart is hurting that women in the 21st century, in 2018 in Guyana, are dying because of callousness, lack of equipment, lack of drugs, lack of anybody who cares. Mr. Speaker.
Dr. Rupert stays quiet on it.
Mr. Speaker, you know, the issue, Mr. Speaker, thank you, Mr. Ramjitan. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Ramjitan and I have our own relationship. You don't know anything about it. Butt out. Just butt out. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker. Because some of my colleagues on that side do not walk around the street, do not go in the market, do not go and talk to people. You don't have to go far, you know. I bet if you walk around this parliament and just ask the staff, ask the security guards, ask the cleaners, ask the staff, what life like? They'll give you some information. If you don't want, if you're frightened to go out there and walk in the street because you got your security all around you all the time, as if somebody want to hurt you. I don't need security, never had one. Mr. Speaker, when we look at the budget, as my colleague Mr. Irfan said, Ali, when he spoke at the opening, that total revenue collection by the end of the year will increase to $217 billion, whereas tax revenue is intended to increase to $199 billion, $28.3 billion than what was projected. And VAT is expected to be coming in at $5.7 billion, to an increase of $5.7 billion to $46.1 billion. Mr. Speaker, let's translate this into some real things. Let's translate. Because people hearing these figures, they may not totally appreciate them. And I'm not sure this side of the House totally appreciates them either. But every single Guyanese, let's take those figures. Every single Guyanese will be required to pay in excess of $265,500 in tax for the year 2018.
Per capita.
Per capita, right? So every per capita, every Guyanese head, child, old people, young people, everybody. So if you take that figure, take the figure and divide it by the number of people in Guyana, that every Guyanese will be paying $265,500 in tax this year. I mean, going to next year yet. Then we have, so that's tax, 265 person. That means a child is just born is going to pay that. Not just me in my age or someone who's in their 90s. So, Mr. Speaker, that's tax. But let's talk about purchasing power. Because what drives the economy is people's ability to spend. And what is government's role in facilitating stimulating the economy so that people have more to spend? They have an idea. And so, Mr. Speaker, in 2019, the total spending is expected to reduce by 18%, or $77 billion when compared to 2014. That is $462,000 less will be spent at the household level now. The first figure given was individual, person. This is now household level, per capita. $462,000 less per annum for every household in Guyana. Right? So, and so, can you understand now? Can you understand now when we say that this cannot be the good life? When you're taking away from people's households $462,000 per annum away from them. They have to buy children's shoes, they have to buy children's books, children's uniforms, they have to get the children to go to school, they have to pack a lunch kit for them. They have to be able to take care of their families, to pay rent in some cases, to pay mortgage in other cases, to catch a bus, to catch use a bicycle or whatever. And you're taking away $462,000 from each household in Guyana. And so I'm just translating figures, because we could go around and talk about these macro figures and people don't quite comprehend. But when you take away this amount of money, that is what I mean by your purchasing power drops. So what it means is that people spend less. They have less to spend. So they go less to the market, or they may buy less chicken or a smaller quantity of chicken or a smaller quantity of fish, because they're stretching the dollars. They're stretching the dollars. And if you listen to some of the man in the street things that some of the newspapers have done, and you know you have NCN, which is quite an expensive operation, that send them to do man in the street. Let them talk to the vendors about when they're bringing out their supplies. What used to be used up in 2 days is taking a week to be used up by the consumers to come and buy from them. When they talk about the number of fish people and chicken people are saying that they're selling less, it's not because all of a sudden people have become vegetarians. It's because people have less money to spend. And so, Mr. Speaker, when the honorable ministers talk about their sectors, I understand you got to boost up your sector, you're working hard, I assume. But then we have to deal with another aspect of this budget. And that's when we get into some other issues. Mr. Speaker, this government, you know, I really believe that many of us on this side felt that 2018 probably is a landmark year in the period of this government. 2019, you're talking about Republic. That's a historic event. We have made our own historic event in 2018, comrades. And that is November 12th, 2018. There was a historic event that took place in this country where there was a local government elections, where the people of this country, in 8 local authorities, dismissed you. They rejected you. It was a referendum on you. On you, the APNU AFC government, not you personally, of course. The issue is that the people of this country, this was a midterm elections for the APNU government, AFC government. The PVPC in 2015, when you won government, you won it with 4,526 votes. That's less than 1% difference between us. And assuming that at some point the election petition will be heard, almost 4 years now, that nevertheless we will continue to recognize the president as the president. We will continue to wait for our case to be heard in court. And we'll continue to say that the 4,526 votes you got to put you in government was a hairbreadth. It's a hairbreadth. It's a hairbreadth. And that on top of that, you got only 3 of 10 regional democratic councils. So the pyramid is so, you're such on a pinnacle with no base at all. And then you're 2016, and we got 28,000 votes more than you. And then 2018, with all your good works and almost $1 trillion budget that you spent, that you said you spent for the betterment of our people. What happened on November 12, 2018 is that you got decimated. You, PVPC, ran all 8 local authorities, all 8 local. This is a government who could not even run all 8 local authorities.
Yeah.
Not even 8.
Yeah, Lixon right in.
You couldn't even contest. You couldn't even contest all 8 local authorities. And you're the government. You're the government. You should be able to do that. You said you're standing on the people's backs.
That's record breaking.
So, Mr. Speaker, 8 local authorities voted. Some didn't have election at all because there was nobody to contest the PBPC. So we won. We acclaimed. But the thing is that 45,000 votes more than the government was given to the People's Progressive Party Civic.
We won.
And we got 113,000 votes more than the AFC. Lord, Lord, Lord. Poor AFC. So you are now sitting on quicksand. You are now on quicksand, and what in Linden they call sucking sand. When you step in it, it starts come up around your waist. And so you are sitting, and therefore, what is interesting about this budget, Mr. Speaker, what is so interesting about this budget is that here is a government who in the beginning was sitting on 4,526 votes, not even a seat in this parliament. A seat in this parliament is about 7,000 voters, but you couldn't half any of us, so you had to give you the whole seat. But the thing is that then you got only 3 of the 10 regions. And then twice you have been told by the people, more so in November 12, 2018, that your performance is bad and that they do not want you there. And so, Mr. Speaker, one would have thought that the government would have gone into some retrospection, some introspection, and said, bye, we better buck up and improve ourselves. No, this is all about is are we this time? Yeah. We in power. We fuss. We fuss. And so we can hear about, we understand, we know, you know. The whole country knows. The whole country knows that you want to hold on to power. And that's understandable. You want to hold on to power. You're in government. However, Mr. King, when you're in government, you see, you're not in government for yourselves. You're not in government for people who support you. The transition from when you're sworn in to when you actually take the mantles of government has to do, you represent all the people all the time. And so, Mr. Speaker, Article 13 makes it very clear about the responsibility of participatory democracy, of inclusive governance.
Yes.
And at least to try, put on some attempt to try.
Lecture them, Gail.
You know, try. But no, what have you done? We have been subjected. We hear about inclusion, but where's inclusion? Where is it? You have 98 boards, of which 65% is one ethnic group, 20-odd% is another ethnic group, and the others are a mixed-up breed. But Mr. Speaker, even let me tell you all something. Even if we took up every seat, which is only 30 of the 98 boards, 30, it would not change the demographics I'm talking about. Mr. Speaker, you talk about inclusion, but you've excluded. You talk about indigenous people and Amerindians, but you fired within the first 6 weeks of your office 1,972 community service officers. You removed from the community, the village economies of those areas where those people came from, $700 million, which they would have earned over the years to develop and take care of their 10,000 dependents. But you came in, you see, with revenge in your heart. You came in with revenge in your heart.
Vengeance.
You did not come, you wanted retribution. You didn't want to build national unity. That's just a saying, a slogan. But Mr. Speaker,
Built it.
we have seen executive abuse and lawlessness. We have seen the erosion of our constitution and the statutes of Guyana. We have brought motions in this House on innocuous things like suicide, and you defeated it. And we brought proposals in that motion of how to deal with suicide, and you threw it out. We brought motions on the interior roads of our country that is hurting the economy and the miners and Bartik and all these interior villages. You threw it out. And yet the minister in the budget speech refers to the problems with the roads in the interior affecting the gold economy.
Yes.
Right? You put it in your mid-year report of 2017 and 2018 about the interior roads. You reject that. We brought a motion that makes sure that we all, as all MPs here, all of us, provide the last 10 years of our declarations of income tax and Integrity Commission report. You threw that out. And then tried to amend it and say in April 2016, that will be a new deadline. The Integrity Commission was put up in 2018. And let's see how many of you have sent in. Right? So that, oh, we've now cleared all of ours. We've cleared all of ours. So, Mr. Speaker.
Camarades, you didn't send for 20 years.
Mr. Speaker,
20 years, camarades.
we brought a motion here. We brought a motion here in October 2017. A motion on proposals to stimulate the economy and reduce poverty and hardships in the 2018 budget. It wasn't allowed on the floor of this House. 100-odd measures. We have said it verbally. We've said in press conferences. And yes, we repeat ad nauseum that the VAT must be restored, the zero-rated VAT items must be restored, which was in 2006. And we will say that as a mantra, because it has to be done. You want to introduce 16 to 14% VAT, that's good. But what you did was when you did that, you then added VAT on a whole set of essential items that were never there before. So you give with one hand, you take away with another hand.
And they take more.
You got in this budget, $3.1 million is in concessions for taxation. And yet you've now increased taxation. In 2018, it will be 2019, it will be $18 billion more in taxation you're taking from the Guyanese people. So you give 3.1 and you're taking 88 billion. It's unconscionable. Doesn't your consciences bother you? How do you sleep at night, guys? How do you sleep?
How do you, camarades?
I didn't ask you who, I said how. I said how, I didn't say who. So, Mr. Speaker, we have tried by all means to put forward the measures that could help. Mr. Speaker, you know, you don't understand, Minister Jordan, that by coming up with these measures of how to improve the budget, how to stimulate the economy, we were taking a political risk as a party who also hopes to be in government. Because were you to have implemented this, We might have trouble getting into government in 2020. But thanks to this and what you're doing now, we will get into government in 2020. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker,
Kijk, 2%.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, you have abandoned many projects. When you came in, I said with revenge and retribution. I wasn't being facetious with that. I really mean it. Because you abandoned, you know, one of the things about democracy, and when you look at the advanced democratic countries, UK, Europe, United States, governments change, presidents change. But the institutional memory remains. That's the power of long-developed institutional democratic states. We had an embryonic one, just a few, not old at all. And yet what have you done? You fired the key institutional memory in every single ministry. People who are qualified, technical people, who are professionals, you fired almost all of them. You lost your institutional memory. That's why sometimes when ministers say they can't find documents, I don't doubt them because they don't know where to look. They're there. But nobody knows because they bring in a whole set of new people who don't know nothing. So, Mr. Speaker, you remove COs, you remove chief executive officers, REOs, PSs, town clerks, overseers. You remove middle management, you remove all sorts of technical people at different levels. And then you have a problem with execution. And then you have my dear friend, Mr. Harman, saying at the Love and Unity rally that no more Mr. Nice Time. Well, I don't know when you were ever nice time. I don't think you ever were nice time. Because you've been removing people from the service who wanted to stay in Guyana, who wanted to serve their country, and were willing to work with you, the APNU AFC government. It wasn't that they didn't want to work with you. They wanted a job and they wanted to serve their country. You got rid of all of them. Mr. Speaker, transformative projects were already in the making. Already in the making.
Get out of here.
And you abandoned them because, you know, my mother always said, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. What you did was you threw out everything, baby and bathwater. And so the projects that were in the making, Specialty Hospital, Amayala, they let them Linden Road with the Brazilians. The hydropower project with Brazilians. The Deepwater Harbor was already in discussions and negotiations. These were Deepwater Harbor, in case you didn't hear. And so these were programs that were in the making, negotiations going on, investors being looked at. So when the minister yesterday, Minister Patterson, said there was no feasibility study and so on, I want to refer him because he may not have paid attention. In fact, I believe all ministers, this should be compulsory reading for you. I want to suggest, because Harman was teaching Irfan a bit of something or other, I am wanting to say to you that I think this should be your mandatory reading during the Christmas holidays. And that is that the Auditor General's report, which is a bombshell. I have never read a report like this coming from the Auditor General's office. Every single ministry is consumed with breaches of procurement, of scandals, of money that can't be accounted for, documents that can't be accounted for. Mr. Speaker, and therefore I hope my recommendation will be taken seriously. But let's go, Mr. Minister Patterson, to page 150 of the Auditor General's report. It's paragraph 375. It shows the number of $4.2 billion under Program 2, where there was a shortfall because of the following. Now, it included the loans from Kuwait, China, IDB, CDB, etc., including East Bank, East Coast, Demerara Road linkage, India loan. And the comment is the delay in sourcing a design consultant. So there was a feasibility and now you're going to design. But let's go to paragraph 384. 384 says that on the 16th of March 2016, the government of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana and the Export-Import Bank of India signed an agreement for the provision by Exim Bank of a credit to the borrower up to an aggregate sum of US $50 million for the purpose of financing East Bank East Coast Road Linkage Project. The sum of 81 million was allocated for the design and construction of the bypass road from Ogle to Great Diamond in order to, one, improve access, two, reduce traffic congestion, and three, reduce travel time. However, according to the appropriation accounts, there was no expenditure during the year, resulting in a shortfall of the full amount. So that on January the 10th, 2018, this is 385, the Minister of Public Infrastructure entered into agreement with a consultant from India to provide consultancy services for the preparation of a detailed project for construction of the East Bank East Coast Road Linkage Project at a cost totaling $1.321 million US dollars. So that's January 2018. It is now December the 6th, 2018. And we still don't have a feasibility, a design. It's a design consultant you're talking about. And so you're sitting on $50 million. Mr. Speaker, we are happy that you're talking back again with the Brazilians about the Lethem Linden Road. And we wish, well, that's what the newspaper says, Mr. Greenwich. I don't know. You didn't say it. One of your other ministers said it.
Honourable member, you
yes.
have 5 minutes remaining.
Sorry? Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You have 5 minutes remaining.
There are projects that were in the making with negotiations, there are records, and yet you've abandoned all of these. Can you imagine, comrades and ministers and colleagues in this House, that were we to have not been so small-minded in 2015, to have allowed the specialty hospital to proceed, to allow the Mila Falls to proceed, to have allowed the negotiations on the Deepwater Harbour to proceed, to have allowed the negotiations with Lethem Linden, Brazilian discussions. 3.5 years later, do you realize, my dear friends, that the Mila Falls would have been finished and we would now be connecting the transmissions? The specialty hospital would have been finished by this year, for example. The Deepwater Harbour we would have finished at some point, making sure that we had an agreement with somebody to build it. So, Mr. Speaker, therefore, the abandonment of these projects have set us back decades. You see, Mr. Speaker, lost opportunities. When a country loses opportunities, it is very difficult to gain back. Time at the individual level and time at a government and nation level are two different things, two different concepts. The time at the government and nation level is about opportunity and doing the correct thing at the right time. These things were in the making. You abandon them all because they're PPP. Who wants PPP? Get rid of them. They're no good.
You have 2 minutes remaining, honourable member.
So, Mr. Speaker, I just have 3 questions to ask the Minister. Where is the 30 billion Gaisuko loan catered for in the budget? There's no record of it anywhere. And therefore, how is it reflected that we're paying back at an interest rate of over 4% on a loan that hasn't been put to use of any kind? And shouldn't the 30 billion Gaisuko loan have been used to save the entire industry? And so we're paying for 15 billion, which we received, and we haven't done anything with it. Second question, Berbice River takeover. That we cannot find, and maybe you will advise us, where are the monies in the budget to help support the continued use of the Berbice Bridge? There's no money we can find. Third question, 18 million US dollar signature bonus, signed in June 2016. It is still not put in the consolidated fund. Could you please advise us? Where is it in the consol fund? Because there's no record of that. And again, it is a violation of the Constitution. Neither is the $788 million, which was part of the 18 million US, which we approved in this House in May 2018 in the second supplementary financial paper for Guyana in terms of its representation to the International Court of Justice to do with our border issue. The commitment made at that day in this House was the $788 million would be reflected in the consolidated fund because you were having these different things, take out from here and put in there and so on. Anyway, it's nowhere. The $788 million is not reflected in the budget in the figures, nor is the $18 million US total. Mr. Speaker, therefore, this budget, my colleague said yesterday that it was one that was destroying the economy and disempowering people and breaking communities for a poor life. I want to say, Mr. Speaker, that we have lost a golden opportunity as a country, as a nation, as a parliament, to have done much better in this parliament, done much better in this budget, to have come out with a budget that would save our nation, stimulate the economy, improve the quality of life of our people. This budget will not do that, sir. Unfortunately, this budget will take our country further back. And so, Mr. Speaker, the government, you're on borrowed time. You're on borrowed time. Thank you.